Mistral just open-sourced a text-to-speech model that runs entirely on a mid-range laptop using just 3 gigabytes of RAM. No API calls, no per-word billing, no rate limits. And in benchmark tests, it outperforms ElevenLabs, a company that studios have been paying serious money to use for the past 2 years. This is not a minor incremental update. This is a category-level shift happening in real time. This is not an isolated event. It is a pattern that has now repeated across every major AI modality. Image generation went from expensive cloud APIs to running locally on consumer GPUs about 2 years ago. Code completion tools that once required enterprise contracts are now open source and running on laptops. Speech synthesis just crossed that same threshold. If you zoom out, you can see the cycle clearly. A capability appears, gets commercialized behind an API wall, then gets open sourced within 12 to 18 months at comparable or better quality. Thousands of companies right now are building products whose core defensibility is simply being the middleman between a user and a model they do not own. That is a fragile position. The moment a good enough open source alternative drops, and based on the current cycle it will, the pricing leverage, the switching costs, and the perceived uniqueness all evaporate simultaneously. Building your moat around access to someone else's model is like building a toll booth on a road that is about to become a public highway. There is a generation of AI startups whose entire pitch can be summarized as, we take this foundation model and apply it to this specific use case. That might work long enough to raise a seed round, but it is not a durable business. OpenAI can change pricing overnight. A competitor can clone your prompt logic in a weekend. And when a local open source model matches the output quality, your infrastructure cost advantage disappears entirely. The question every founder should be asking is, what does our product do that cannot be replicated by someone just swapping in a different model? The things that are actually hard to replicate are the things that take time to accumulate. Proprietary data sets built from your users' interactions. A fine-tuned model that behaves correctly in your specific domain, not just generally. Integration depth that required 18 months of engineering and customer feedback loops to get right. And perhaps most importantly, the trust that users have built with your product over time. None of these things disappear when a new open source model drops. In fact, a cheaper underlying model just makes all of them more valuable. Every major open source model release is actually a gift to product teams who are willing to use it honestly. It forces a simple but uncomfortable question. If this capability became free and local tomorrow, what would be left of your product? If the answer is a better UI, a stronger brand, a proprietary dataset, and deep integrations, you are in a strong position. If the answer is essentially nothing, that is critical information to have now while you still have runway and time to pivot, rather than discovering it when the market moves and your growth curve flattens. The teams that will navigate this era well are the ones building with the assumption that whatever costs real money today will be essentially free within a year and a half. That means designing your product architecture, your pricing model, and your hiring strategy around capabilities you will own, not capabilities you rent. When Mistral's TTS model drops your infrastructure costs, the right response is not to celebrate a lower bill. It is to reinvest that margin into the layers of your product that open source can never commoditize: your data, your users, and your domain expertise. Run the floor test on whatever you are building right now. Imagine the core AI capability at the heart of your product becomes free, local, and open source tomorrow. Write down what remains. If that list is short, you have just received the most valuable piece of strategic feedback you could get, and you received it while you still have time to act. The builders who treat open source releases as competitive threats are going to keep losing ground. The ones who treat them as a forcing function for clarity are the ones who will build something that actually lasts.